Hello there, my name is Dr. Samuel Moore. I am the Scholarly Communications Specialist at Cambridge University Libraries, and I'm going to talk today about the Cambridge self-archiving policy that's based on rights retention. So how did the Cambridge policy come about? We are responsive to the changing open access policy landscape, both internationally and in the UK. But particularly in the UK, our funding body, UKRI, has announced a policy that precludes funding for hybrid journals. So researchers who want to publish in hybrid journals now have to find an alternative route to compliance. And so we did that through rights retention. In order to understand the issues with rights retention, we opted for a 1-year opt-in pilot that was undertaken from April 2022 to April 2023 to understand issues with rights retention. And we had about 300 or 400 researchers who signed up. And it turns out it was quite easy to do. So we opted for a full policy. So following the successful pilot, the university consultations and committee approval led to the full self-archiving policy being launched in 2023. The whole process was quite smooth. There was no one who particularly objected to it, either before or since. And then publishers were notified twice along the way, once for the pilot and once for the full policy, which is important, as I'll explain in the next slide. So this is the policy. It's fairly standard legalese, but it essentially requires researchers to grant the university a non-exclusive license to make the accepted manuscript openly available in our repository under Creative Commons license, CC BY. Crucially, the policy offers an opt-out for all papers and researchers, while also allowing researchers to select any license that fulfills their needs. The policy therefore sets the default to open access and requires an element of friction for researchers who wish to keep their research closed. And it's based on not on the author themselves notifying publishers of rights retention, but on us notifying the publisher. And we do this by sending a number of letters to publishers to say that we will be enacting this policy. So we had some issues with the pilot and the policy, but not too many, but I'll just talk through these now. A small number of authors have been confused about whether they themselves need to include a rights retention declaration in their article file. We recommend that they do this, but they do not need to in order to comply with the policy. The rights retention declaration is something that simply alerts the publisher to the fact that they'll be retaining rights to share their article under CC BY upon acceptance, but it's not necessary for our policy. We found that some publishers rejected papers that contained this rights retention declaration, and many asked for the declaration to be removed. They are keen not to normalize the rights retention declaration. And another thing, it's been hard to find contact details for a long tail of publishers. We had advice that we had to get in touch with them directly, and so we did that, and that was a labor-intensive task. And finally, training and staff time to implement the pilot and then the policy was an initial burst of activity. It was not a small amount of work, but has been much smoother since, and we are not receiving any confusion or issues with the policy whatsoever, and no one has opted out yet either. So if you are looking into enacting a rights retention policy, which I hope you are, I just have a couple of recommendations for how to do this. So fold the rights retention policy into a self-archiving policy or similar. The term rights retention is confusing for researchers. So if you already have an open access policy, try to kind of include that, and you don't need to use the language of rights retention because we found this just a bit confusing. Try to take the responsibility away from individual researchers. So notify as many publishers as you can and do not require a rights retention statement. I think if you go down the route of requiring authors to do something for every paper they submit, lots of them are going to either not do it or forget, and they might push back. It's important to allow license choice and an opt-out to the policy. I think that the license choice is good because it allows all researchers to participate in the way they feel comfortable. And similarly, allowing an opt-out to the policy means you're not forcing researchers to do something they don't want to do. Again, however, you're setting the default to open, which I think is the right approach. Good communication is the key to this successful policy implementation. We embarked on a pretty robust round of briefings and workshops with researchers around this. So the actual communication is just as important as the policy itself. And just finally, relying on the resources shared by other institutions. And you can always ask. Many of us in the UK have gone through this process already, and we're very willing to talk to people about this. So I hope you do go down the road of implementing rights retention policies. I think they are very easy and low-cost ways to make research open access, and I think more in countries around the world will be doing so. So thank you.